I was a gay Mormon in the 90s, closeted, and so that already had its own thing. And then coming out to my mother was a terrible experience. And so I leaned heavily on alcohol and drugs already at that point. And so by the time I met a crystal meth dealer in the DC party scene, I was just so fascinated with the drug world and the underbelly. And I was like, I'm young, I can go experiment and get out. But he and I started dating, and then I fell into dealing for him a couple times, and then things between he and I, he got like psychotic, and then it just led to me trying to prove him wrong that I can deal drugs too. And and in my mind, I'm again 22, invincible because I can quit whenever I want to. All the lies. I'm already failing out of college.
Aloha and welcome to another show, guys. If you haven't yet, make sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a positive review. And hit that bell so you're always in the loop. Don't forget to subscribe to my Patreon for ad-free content and more episodes. My Patreon is always free. You can also support the show by buying me a coffee. Now, today's episode is intense. It's raw and it's real. I'm joined by Sean Hemeon, actor, abstract artist, and writer. You may know him from True Bloods, Criminal Minds, 911, or the groundbreaking series Husbands. But behind the scene is a past you won't believe. Sean's memoir, Good Little Drug Lord, is a gripping descent into addiction, crime, and a tragic overdose that still haunts him to this day. He's a gay Mormon turned into a drug dealer and federal informant. And what happened one night in Atlanta changed everything. In this episode, we talk about the chaos, the heartbreak, the regret, and what it truly means to make amends. Please note this conversation includes strong language, drug use, and graphic references to death. Listener discretion is advised. Now let's begin Sean's journey into the drug world. I want to just welcome you, aloha, and welcome to this show, Sean. Now, I recently heard your story on a true crime podcast.
Ooh.
I know, and I was deeply, deeply touched by your raw honesty and your heart in your journey. You mentioned working on a memoir titled Good Little Drug Lord. I read the introduction. It's incredibly powerful, especially knowing it's partly inspired by a desire to bring answers and closures to the mother of someone who tragically, I guess, lost their son. So
Mhm.
I'd love for you to share that story with our listeners. But I guess before we jump in, I just want you to know that I really love for you to share your experience fully and deeply as comfortably as you can, as you feel.
Mhm.
And you can take your time. I won't interrupt you. I'll just be here listening very closely and holding space for your story.
Oh, I
So
appreciate that. But ask me questions. I mean, honestly,
absolutely I am. I got a whole list.
just jump in there,
Okay.
and I'm happy to tell the story. I'm also happy to converse back and forth.
Yeah.
I love an engaged audience.
Yes, yes,
Um,
absolutely. So,
yeah.
so if you can walk us I guess how you began this good little
Well,
drug lord. How did it begin?
well, again, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me more of an opportunity to share this story, especially this story specifically, because um, it is the main reason I have written the memoir. And I'm 20. I just celebrated 20 years sober in April.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh
That
my
is
gosh.
continuous sobriety. No, that is no weed. That is no any of that. That is
That's
just
awesome. Good for you.
straight sobriety. Thank you. Um,
Congratulations.
the 20 years is also relevant because the memoir itself, I could not have gotten to in my first 10 years of recovery, because I wore the story, I wore it like a badge of honor, like it was my source of validation. I mean, how often do you hear a story with the premise line, a gay Mormon drug dealing narc for the federal government? I mean, those things just don't, it's like, how do those puzzle pieces fit together? Um, and I thrived on like, yeah, this is what happened to me, but not really able to just sit in like the depth of how absolutely fortunate I am to still be alive, to have my freedom, to even have a prosperous life, that I do. Like I already mentioned my husband, and being an actor, following my dreams, being an actor in Hollywood. It's just like, it's mind blowing to me. I've done a few of the interviews, and in doing this, I'm realizing like just getting out of my story alive and not in prison, I would have been satisfied in anywhere USA, working some 9 to 5, like normal life. Like that would have been the bonus. But no, I'm here in Hollywood pursuing all my creative endeavors and living an entirely new, different life. It's just that part is just mind blowing. Uh,
Absolutely.
I
I
also
think
feel, go ahead.
you,
No.
I was going to say, because you even mentioned in your book, this is your words, that you are a raging faggot, drug dealing narc, and that's raw. It's direct, it's honest, and I respect that.
Yeah, well, I mean, in that
Right?
same,
So,
yeah, no, to go in that same vein, this didn't come out 10 years ago because it would have just been masturbatory. It would have been grief trauma porn. It would have been like, ooh, a further of like, look what happened to me. But
mhm.
so now, 20 years later, I'm producing this, and I also realize on a deeper level why now versus like 10 years or even 15 years ago was because of having to face um this story I'm about to tell you, having to face the actual truth of what that means. I'll get into detail, but I mean, essentially, as you already alluded to, somebody died, and they died because I failed to act. Now, I can just say that sentence and be like, yeah, this thing happened. But really, if you sit with that, like, what? And so now, these many years later, I was able to really hold that and question that. And that became how I designed the book, even because I go forward in time. I do this rise and fall of the good little drug lord. How the hell did I become a dealer and then a narc and then a bigger, even bigger dealer because I was working for the federal government, and then the whole fall down. But it's all set up in this moment that happens in this peak moment, when I'm peak drug lord, and I meet this young man in the same night he passes away, and I'm confronted with who I thought I was. And so I go backwards in time to, the traumas of my past to see like what happened for me to really, sit in what happened that could lead me to that, because I thought I was a good person and I still am, but am I? I don't know. I did this thing. So I was able to confront that now today with who I am. And also with I mean, my biggest regret, actually, we're going to hold that thought, because I'm going to
Yes.
tell you what my biggest regret was when
Yeah.
we actually get to that part of the story. So that's why the book is out now. That's why The Good Little Drug Lord. It is a message in a bottle, and that'll make sense in a moment, because how I even got arrested. This is the Spark Notes summary version of, I was a gay Mormon in the 90s, closeted, and so that already had its own thing. And then coming out to my mother was a terrible experience. And so I leaned heavily on alcohol and drugs already at that point. And so by the time I met a crystal meth dealer in the DC party scene, I was just so fascinated with the drug world and the underbelly. And I was like, I'm young, I can go, experiment and get out. But he and I started dating, and then I fell into dealing for him a couple times, and then things between he and I, he got like psychotic, and then it just led to me trying to prove him wrong that I can deal drugs too. And and in my mind, I'm again 22, invincible because I can quit whenever I want to. All the lies. I'm already failing out of college. Again, I'm going very fast through. This is all in the book. um, and He tried to stop me numerous times, and eventually at that time, I thought he was the one that called the cops on me. Now, in current times, even speaking to him in the last couple years, 20 years later, like,
Oh,
you
wow.
know, he
Hmm.
did not. But at that time, I thought I was arrested because of him. And when I was arrested, this is in DC, so it's automatically charged federally. And so it was intent with possession with intent to distribute with what they found on me and the paraphernalia and all that. I was screwed. Um, 10 plus years easily. And I had a mandatory debrief with some federal agents. And so I went in and um, this is such a hilarious chapter in the book, by the way, because you expect like men in black looking dudes or some kind of uniforms. These guys wore cargo shorts, cargo pants, and like band t-shirts. One of them I described, he looked like Will Ferrell. The other guy, and I'm not kidding, the other guy looked like he was like the bassist from for some 90s rock band. Like he had a fire red Fu Manchu. I was like, okay, these guys are like clearly maybe deep undercover kind of things. It would just tripped me out. It just tripped me out. And they interrogated me. They knew some information about the people I dealt with. They knew a lot of kind of stuff. And so they in so many words without explicitly saying it, were saying, I needed to get them information in order to decrease my sentencing or get my case dropped. And I alluded to the fact that, like, well, I have to keep doing what I'm doing, but like a lot in order to reach the kind of intel that they need. And they, in so many words, without saying it, gave me their blessing. So the federal government is telling me to deal drugs on a massive amount. It was my takeaway from that experience. And so and but I saw enough movies where I was like, I'm not a rat. I'm not a rat. Like I really struggled with that in um, and everybody in DC was paranoid to deal with me because I was arrested and they found out, but they didn't know I signed an informant agreement, which I denied, of course. So my thought was like, well, let me go to other cities closer to the Mexican border because of the cartel. It's cheaper and anyway, I finally, I did that a couple times. And I found a guy in Atlanta who was like one person away from like cartel stuff, so I could get it cheaper there because I had a timeline and because I was very high and very stupid. I started trafficking through the airports. Um, 2004. So I learned, but in the beginning I didn't know what I was doing, and I kept buying tickets, one-way tickets day of, and they would always put me in the line to be searched. But the funny part, interesting part was this is still post 9/11, so I'm thrust into a line, and I look like a dumbass white college frat boy, and I'm in line with like 18 Middle Eastern looking men. They only cared about racial profiling then. People were still
Yes.
scared. And so I would always skate through. I mean, twice. This is just an example of how much I guess privilege that I was walking through security with, because twice they found little tiny baggies on me and just took pity because I was like a sad frat boy and threw it away and told me to go. I mean, that just shows you where their priorities were at that time and what I could get away with. But I stupidly continued to do that, and that brought a lot of success for me back in DC, where I could start getting closer to I started supplying suppliers, and that's who I wanted to reach in order to I never gave the agents anything this entire time. I made up information once, but I just couldn't deal with like being a rat or whatever. Um, but then I was like, well, maybe I'd turn in the guy that I'm, who's supplying me down in Atlanta, but he was telling me that he was like one person away from cartel connections and even brought me to a pickup once. And I was like, maybe I turn in that guy. But then I don't know. I remember like that's when you started hearing about cartels chopping off heads and stuff. So I was like, okay, we're not gonna. I liked the guy. Like he was a born again, like he was raised like super Christian like I was, and so, but now he was this drug addicted meth supplier. But like imagine like a youth pastor being like a drug supplier. Like that was like the kindness that like it was. He was always concerned for my well-being, and I'm like, are you a meth head, like what are you, like it just didn't make sense to me. And so I liked him, and so it was hard to even think of doing that. And also like if I then ratted on his supplier, would they chop his head? Like this is the crazy stuff that I was going through, and who know how, how true any of it was, but like that's what I
Yeah.
was going through. And um but but the thing that changed all of it was, so I'd go in for the weekend or the night and, resupply and then stupidly smuggle back through the airports. And so I'd always stay like a night. And so this one night, one of his friends who I never met before I met was just this beautiful young college country looking boy, curly hair, tan skin. I mean, just like he looked like an Abercrombie bag. And clearly he and I, we were really hitting it off. And, I was just so nervous around him, even though I was so high on meth and all kinds of other drugs and stuff. And I just kept giving him drugs. And, um, he told me this really sad story because, again, this is early 2000s. And he had just come from the hospital, and like his boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, it was unclear, was in the hospital, but like dying. And that young man's very religious family wouldn't let him see him. And so he was in this state of mind. And I dealt a lot of different kinds of drugs, mostly meth and a drug called GHB, which I hear these days is becoming very popular. But here's the thing: it's very lethal if you are. So just be careful. Make sure you don't ever mix it with alcohol, because that's kind of what we think happened in this story. And also, cover your drinks because it is a very date rapey drug. It's just not good. If you are taking it like I was, which again, I was at that point in my addiction, I was using all day, every day. I forgot what a sober breath was like. The meth was kind of like the baseline, and the GHB is what I took to actually feel sort of happy because it hits the same part as alcohol. So you feel very like, kind of bubbly happy. But if you take too much, you can fall unconscious, which happened a lot. And if you mix it with alcohol, it's lethal. It shuts your whole system down. And so this young man, I gave him, he was used to doing meth, I guess, but like I gave him that, but he asked for a GHB and then he asked for more of it. And I was like, okay. But he wasn't taking nearly as much as I was like normally taking. So I was like, we're good. But then he slipped away for a little while. We don't know where he went. In retrospect, we think he went somewhere and intentionally drank alcohol, but we didn't know that at the time. So when he came back, like he was like a drunken zombie. And we're like, oh man, I was so disappointed. I was like, we were gonna have a fun night. Now we can't. But anyway, we wanted to go to the clubs, and we put him in the back seat.
And this is the Abercrombie looking guy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, I was really, I mean, I was the validation I got from this Abercrombie looking guy wanting me after feeling so, I mean, a lifetime of feeling crummy about myself, that like it felt better than any drug I was on at the time. So I was like, yes, let's pursue this. And so I was I was already very concerned about him, period, just as a human to human level. But I was also extra like, wake up, I want to have fun, I want to feel validated. So I was very cautious of, watching him. And so we lied him on his side in the back seat, and then we went inside the club, and it was I came out every half an hour. And he seemed fine, and so that club was not fun. And so then we went to this other place, which in the LGBT community there's bathhouses that gay men love to go to, love to use the sauna, but they love to do other things in there that, for me as a drug dealer at that time, is like being a hot dog vendor at the Dodgers game.
Yeah.
People are there and to engage in certain,
Sure.
yeah, and so it's like they would pay whatever they want for the drugs. And so and then also the supplier guy that I was with, the youth pastor supplier guy, like that's where he always went and stuff. I mean, he came from a very repressed religion, so it makes sense that the reaction to that is to get very high on meth and be very sexually like, brah. I've seen it a lot. Anyway, that's all beside the point. It's just like we went into this place, and then I was like, okay, he's still not awake, but I should check on him every so often. And but I kept like I was smoking meth at this time, so I kept doing it, and then suddenly like, oh my god, it's been an hour. I should have checked on him a long time ago. And then so I finally did, and there he was when I got in the front seat and looked in the back, like there was just like this eerie quality Like it was just he just I don't know. There's like a faint blue, and it didn't feel right. And so I went, but I didn't know if I was messing with my mind. And so I went inside, found the let's just call him youth pastor. I found the youth pastor, and he was engaging with some other young men and didn't want to leave the room, and I was like freaking out. I was like, you need to come, and he was thinking I was being paranoid, just tweaked out of my mind or something. He's like, just go chill. And I wanted to believe him because I didn't want what I was thinking was happening to be true. So like I wanted to believe him. So I went back to my room. I was like, okay, I will check in another half an hour. And then I just started smoking more. And then suddenly it's like an hour later, and I'm just like, oh, crap, I gotta, and I run out there. And I remember getting in the front seat, turning around, and then his eyes were open and just looking right at me. And I fall back against the front console, and I'm just screaming because I'm taking it like his face is blue, nose is, there's snot, dried snot, there's a pee stain, and the eyes are not, they're not alive. And so, and then just to make sure, like, he's kind of, again, he was like on his side. So I picked him up just to see what I could do. And the experience of picking up, I mean, the true definition of dead weight, like, it comes from this. It's a very different experience. Um, they're just it just feels it just when you do move a body that is no longer alive, it just feels different. It's heavier. There's just something very unnatural about it. So when I picked him up, it's terrified me so much that I let go of him. And then when the body fell back down and the way it hit the door and ricocheted, that was so unnatural that it completely confirmed my oh, everything. Like it shattered everything that was trying to keep me from believing that this young man is dying or dead. And so that's when I ran inside, and I mean I basically grabbed youth pastor and I was like, get out of this car. And he's laughing at me the whole way out there. He's just thinking like I'm overreacting this whole thing. He got in the front seat, turned around, and just started screaming. So that confirmed it. And then he wouldn't stop screaming, so I slapped him. And then and I was like, we got to call the ambulance. And then as I started to, I realized like, oh my gosh, we have too much product on us. And that's also why I was like hesitating to believe what was happening earlier, was because I was paranoid. I was paranoid that the location we were at was going to get busted. I was going to get busted. He was going to get like all stupid, selfish stuff that forced me to not to want to believe that this person was dying. Like I couldn't, and this is where the disconnect is for me because if somebody's dying in front of me right now, I'm like, save his life. But like, and that's the kind of person I thought that I was. But yes, very high. Yes, on day three. Yes, all these yeses, but it still doesn't matter. I still thought beyond all that, I was still a good person that would react in that way. But as I was calling them, I'm realizing all of this. And then I was like, um, I instead asked, "Where's the nearest hospital?" And it worked out that us driving him to the hospital was going to be faster than an ambulance coming to us anyway. So I was like, "Great!" And so, I mean, I slapped him again. I was like, "Go!" I mean, he was so frantic. He drove up a one-way street, and we're speeding there. It's like 5 minutes away. Coming up with the story. Oh, we were at a party and somebody gave him something. We found him like this. Great, that's fine. And then at that moment, as we're like, I mean, like he's he's avoiding incoming cars, and I remembered I knew CPR from a summer of being a lifeguard, and so I jumped in the back seat. I was like, it was. I don't want to say it was funny, but it was kind of like ridiculous because I was like, I know C like I got really excited because I was like, I know CPR, I know CPR, and I jump in the back seat and he's still swerving, and I'm like, getting ready to do it and then falling and then getting ready to do it, and then when I started doing chest compressions, yellow bile started coming up out of his mouth and over, and I jumped back. I was like, my CPR did not train me for this. I don't know what this is like, but luckily by that point we were pulling up to the ER and then running inside like chickens with their heads cut off, like and I knew the severity of it when doctors came running out with the gurney, and they opened the back door and his head just sort of flopped out, and the nurse was like, oh fuck, and they rushed him in, and then immediately we're jumping on him doing CPR, and then the doctor came to us, and He's like, don't go anywhere. He was very serious. He was asking us what we did. And I was like, we don't know. And then we're like, we think it's GHB and somebody may have given him alcohol, is what we said. Um, and well, we didn't know about the alcohol at that point. That was some theorizing we did later. We just said somebody gave him GHB. And that's when he was like, this is more than that. And that's when we started thinking like maybe he had alcohol. Anyway, they were very serious about us not leaving. I started panicking, but I wouldn't leave. I needed to see what was going to happen. Youth pastor was like, he's like, you need to go grab your bag from my car and run. I'll take care of this. And then, which I snuck away and I ran away. I was very, scared to do that. But literally 2 minutes later, he calls me and he's screaming. He ran into his car and took off as well. So we basically left the body there and ran away and stuff. And so, um, uh,
Was he dead?
yeah,
He was
yeah.
already. Was he rigor mortis or no? Not yet.
Um,
When they get that
they get
stiffness. I
that
don't know.
stiffness to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was on the verge of it. I think when they rushed him in and we were outside the room, I mean, it's burned into my, of course, the story's burned into my memory, but it was a door where you have a little window by the handle. And I remember just looking in and I just remember seeing that nurse trying for her dear life on top, like straddling him and like just doing it. And I was like, well, if maybe not rigor mortis yet, because then they would have
Mm-hmm.
thought they had some chance at saving him. So,
Yeah.
and also the way he sort of flopped when they moved his body to the gurney. So I don't think so. I think uh, it's hard for me to dwell on it, but I have, and when I do, it's to think that I don't know if like say we did call the ambulance and they did start CPR, whatever they had right there in the parking lot. Maybe that would have done it. Maybe if I pushed through with the CPR, maybe that would have done it. Maybe if I just reacted an hour before. Those are all the things that I go through that I regret that I didn't like. Why it's those things. It's one of those situations where it's like you think you know how you're going to act until you're in it. There were so many circumstances that were fighting against me. That part of me that was like, this person needs help. And there were so many circumstances that were trying to change that, like literally willing reality to change, like willing it. Like this isn't that level of denial, if you will. Um, because, well, and it was also, it was a awful metaphor, but a metaphor for how I even got to where I got in my story because I used, I guess, that same energy to deny the fact that the consequences of extreme drug use and abuse would happen to me. Literally all of them did, except for death itself, but near death multiple times. And not they didn't just happen to me. I mean, they happened to me tenfold. I fell asleep at the wheel and drove under a Mack truck. I was arrested, going to jail for 10 plus years. It turned me into an informant. Like I avoided and then so a latter part of the story, I panicking, I decided to work with this Russian mafia connection who was putting guns in my face, and then I started owing him money and he started threatening me and my family. Like, what? What?
This is after the death of this young man?
When after that happened, I got out of Atlanta like within the next hour because I was so paranoid. I was
Yeah.
thinking everything they were coming after me, but also it's just like look, I couldn't face it, and there was no way I was going back to Atlanta. I don't know what was going to be traced to me. I don't know all kinds of paranoid, delusional thinking already from the thing that happened, but also from doing all the drugs and not sleeping. That just enhances it 1,000 times. So I was like back in DC nearing I had a couple months before my sentencing, nothing to give the informants. And I did. So one, one of my runners, one of my friends who would run drugs for me, he was a hairstylist. And so he did in-home hairstyling, but also I just think that's so funny. Like, let me go do your hair. Oh, here's an 8 ball. I just think it's ridiculous. I mean, there's so many ridiculous elements of the story that's just like, are you kidding? But one of the girls' hair that he did, her boyfriend was trying to get into the business, but the only hitch was he was supposedly affiliated with the Russian mafia. Um, So when I was back in Atlanta, I mean, sorry, back in DC, refusing to travel, I needed a whole new connection. Now I was desperate, so I agreed to go meet this person, and he, you know, he threatened in so many words that he was, I was not going to move forward with it, but turns out he had the best meth I think the city had ever seen that I have ever tried. So of course I was like all over that, and so I started, and that's, you know, that's what really thrust me into the Good Little Drug Lord is a very good title, so I don't want to say drug lord, but I mean it thrust me into a position where majority all of the gay scene, but a lot of the straight scene was coming to me, um, which then put me back in the tracks to sort of like, okay, let me get closer to suppliers that then, you know, people. It became down to like who deserves to go to jail, which was even a weird thing to, you know, which was even hard to overcome too, because once you just got to know other addicts, yeah, everybody did shitty stuff, but everybody had trauma and people were running from things, and so I just had compassion for them. So in the middle of this peak, I get this random phone call, and it's this deep Southern voice, big like Southern drawl. She was like, "Hello," like I mean, and she was sobbing, and she was like begging me. She's like, "Please don't hang up." I'm like, who is this? She was like, this number was the last one on my son's phone bill. I mean, the young man, when he left us that night, I made him take my number, and he called me once when he was coming. Anyway, this was his mother, and she was just begging to know what happened. Yes, they could, you know, tell her at the hospital when he died, he had this, and this in his system, but just begging to know, like, she's like, I just want to know. That's it. That's all. That's all. How did my baby boy die? That's it. And I've already set up that I escaped Atlanta, paranoid that they follow me. And this, so as an extension of that, my first immediate thought, again, I haven't been sleeping for days. I'm very high in meth. So the combination, oops, sorry. So the combination of that is making me paranoid to the point where my first thought is like, this is the cops and they are trying to get me to confess. That was my delusional thought at the time. Um, but the heartache in her voice was burning that thought process to the, I mean, it was eviscerating it. And so I was battling myself, like the humanity in me was like hearing this mother, hearing my mother, like just like she just wants to know, versus the powerful paranoid drug addled part. And my biggest regret, and I have many, and they're big, but this one is the number one. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, lady. And I hung up on her. It's my biggest regret because I denied her closure. I denied this grieving mother closure for a son I'm sure she loved. I'm sure they were from the deep south and him being gay was a big issue. She probably was super white Christian religious. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this was her son, and I denied her closure on that. That is my biggest regret. I could handle consequences that happened to me. But when my actions affected potentially the entire life, her entire the rest of her entire lifespan. I mean, that's just like, and I couldn't handle the thought of that 10 years ago. That's why it's like now I can't, and I'm not admitting to saying like I can handle that thought now. No, no, but I can at least talk about it and hold space for it. Like my actions affected somebody in that way. And my actions, I don't think my actions necessarily killed the young man, but my lack of actions.
Yeah.
A year later, you know, after I got sober, I got my phone, like I got my phone bill, and I tried to find her, and it wasn't working, and um, I tried to piece together what happened, and I think I gave it. I'm trying to remember, but I think I gave it like a great effort, but nowhere near the effort I gave it last year when I was while I was writing this. I was like, no, 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 I'm gonna find her. This is gonna be part of the book. This is like I'm gonna find her. And I can't you know,
Of
they
course,
get
it's
rid
too
of they
long.
no they get rid of phone records at this point.
Mhm.
I have a distinct memory of like the outside of the hospital and also it being next to a highway, but I think that hospital's closed now. And
Oh,
also I realized, I mean, I scoured obituaries from that time period. Obviously, I don't remember the day. I remember like, it's like April, maybe even May of 2004. But I scoured obituaries in all over Atlanta, but then I realized,
hey, Ohana, I hope you're loving this conversation as much as I am. I just wanted to pause for a quick moment to ask for your support. If you're enjoying what you're hearing and feel like we've earned it, we'd be so grateful if you could leave us a rating or review. Your honest feedback really helps us grow and reach more people who love exploring these fascinating topics. And if you think this episode would resonate with someone you know, don't forget to share it with them. Mahalo nui loa for being part of our journey. Now, back to the show.
2004. But I scoured obituaries in all over Atlanta, but then I realized her drawl. I mean,
Mm,
it was thick. I was like, wait, she's not from Atlanta. Of course they're gonna do obituaries from her hometown, which is like
yeah,
Alabama or South Carolina. Like, how do I know? So
right.
I was like, I can't. How do I? I feel like there's got to be I don't know. There'll be something when I can afford a private investigator to like, okay, this is your thing, do this thing. So I proceeded to continue to write the book as a message in a bottle. Like in the epilogue, I have a letter to her. I mean, the dream is this reaches her. This dream is that this maybe one day I get to give her a hug and apologize. And who knows if she's found a way to move on? Who knows if she's even still alive? Who knows if she's still in that grief and never found closure? Um, so I had this higher purpose, which I was actually grateful for because it really motivated how I showed up to the page and continue to write. It also motivates how I promote it and market it and get it out there because I have this higher purpose of doing this of essentially making amends.
Yeah,
I've done the
I
12
see
steps.
that.
Yeah, I've done the 12 steps for these 20 years, and part of that, one of those steps, if people aren't familiar, is you do make amends for wrongs you committed towards others. And so there's many ways to do that. And amends as being like a change in behavior, not just an apology, but an apology and a change in behavior and stuff. And so um, this is that working amends towards, you know, um, righting that terrible, terrible wrong of hanging up on her and her
Yeah.
son and her son. I mean, so in that mind too. I mean, there's this arc. I really leaned into the mother son arc because I wrote it to let that mother know what happened to her son, but I
Yep.
also wrote it to let my mother know what happened to her son.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yep. The
also, go ahead.
yeah the book. Yes, you did mention that this book is for two mothers, one who
Yeah.
lost her son, and one who raised you, and that's very powerful.
The other, I guess the other big final reason why now versus earlier was because, this arc with my mother whom when I attempted suicide at 19 and when I came out to her, her first words were like panicked, teary-eyed, like, "Do you have AIDS?" Like, God bless you now. Just very like, no, mom, like, no. She's like, "Ugh, well, we love you, but not the lifestyle," which is like Christian code for, being gay. So, and then the distancing between us because she didn't know how to deal with me, I didn't know how to deal with her, and then that's when I went off the deep end. And I would even come home and brag that I was dealing, just to get attention, and they just did not know how to respond. My dad took me to my it's like take your son to work day. He took me to my debriefing, my investing, the interrogation, that kind of stuff. They were there, but at the same time, like, what do you do what do you do with a kid like me? Like, what do you do, especially like one that my mother thinks I'm choosing, to be this way, and therefore, because of that choice, yes, of course it's leading to all the drugs because that's what the disgusting gays do, whatever. So when I got sober, now my mother has highlights. I was mocking her just now, but underneath all of that, she was still my mother. She did
Yeah.
not. Uh, she, she mothered in the most
I
necessary
guess
ways. The
that
most
she could. Yeah. At the
she.
time.
Well, after my case was dismissed, which is a whole other story. I lasted 6 more weeks out there, but for read the book because it's a really good ending. But it led to, and I'm spoiler alert, I got sober, but it led to the call, the call. When I say the call, I literally Sunday morning, 8:33 a.m., my 23rd birthday, September 26th, 2004, I called and I just said, "Mom," in the most broken voice, and she literally just said, "Where are you?" And for her, it was like beneath the labels, beneath even the religions, beneath everything, the turmoil, the angst, bottom floor, this was her son. This was Mama Bear. The cub is in danger, and so I gave them the address, and they came and got me, which is beautiful. And we
Yeah.
spent the next few years in recovery, like I was just like I was like, what is it, like who like so we
Did you
were
go through the shakes and all that
well.
detoxifying? Is that
That's
real?
that's definitely real with alcohol more than
Oh,
anything else. With
okay.
with with meth, it was a lot of short term, it was just sleeping. It was like I slept for 2 weeks. Actually I take that back. I GHB. So this is true of antidepressants. Sometimes when you're detoxing off antidepressants, you have something called brain zaps. Like it's the electrical stuff like trying to rework itself. It's pretty common. It's terrifying when it happens. Um, Before I even got sober, with so much GHB that I was doing, I was getting brain zaps even while using. Um, and I'm gonna make a note of that because I'm gonna um, talk about that later. But brain zaps was something that like I would continue to have a few weeks afterwards. So not
Wow.
tremors, but brain zaps. And then with the meth, I just slept for like 2 weeks, and then but long term, dopamine meth not only uh, blocks the reuptake of dopamine, it also
Mhm.
pushes out more. So what you or I, without any drugs, get, when we have that piece of chocolate and we get a drop of dopamine in our pharmacy back there. If I was on meth and I had the chocolate, that drop would be an ocean of dopamine.
Wow.
Hence why a lot of people, you know, hyper focus on certain things. Some it is
Mm.
sex because that's even asking for even more. I mean, that's just like you're swimming in an ocean of dopamine, which means it lasts longer. But others like, I had one client that just was obsessed with power tools, and so he had a room full of power tools. Or when you get the psychosis from not sleeping, people think there's bugs, so they get obsessed with
Oh,
peeling apart the
yes. Yeah.
skin.
Those are
Um,
meth users.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
a lot of the boys loved primping and pruning so that they'd have the most perfect eyebrows and just obsessed with skin and hair and anyway, um, why was I telling you that part? I was telling you that part. I don't remember, but I was telling you about my mother. And so the
Yes.
first couple years of getting into recovery, I really felt close to my mother because I'm just the son who's doesn't know how to function. And so when I moved out to LA, she even helped me move out. But when 2008 happened, she finally, I say finally in a good way, finally divorced my father, and she came out to California. And the Mormons at that time were pushing Prop 8, which was against legalizing gay marriage. And my mother was like, "Well, of course I'm voting against that. Like, I mean, of course I'm voting for not allowing gay marriage," not even realizing what she was saying to me. And so, as the more sober I got, the more painful it was to actually be in a relationship with her. And so sadly, we stopped talking for quite a number of years, but that was necessary in letting, grieving the mother I was still trying to expect her to be, and now allowing her to be the mother that she was, or what, I didn't, I mean, I really thought I was like, we're done, but we slowly reconnected. And the last chapter of my book is I'm talking about my wedding day in 2023, where my very Mormon mother walked me down my very gay wedding, walked me down the
That's
aisle,
awesome.
you
Did the
know.
rest of your family go with you too? Like your dad, your brothers, everybody? Did they all accept you? Your whole family? Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
great.
there's you, most people. It's interesting. A lot of people that don't, that maybe like are against gay or transgender anything, 9 times out of 10, it's because they don't really, they may say, I know a gay person, I work with one, but no, I mean, like, really know a gay person or a
Yeah.
transgender person. They're being really, truly, none of my family is Mormon except for my mother. But
Oh,
my brother, my eldest brother, he was like leading Mormon example. And I affected him by, what happened with Prop 8, but then also saying other things. But the thing that really shifted him was he was one of the creative designers at YouTube. And for almost 2 years, he worked side by side this lesbian woman with kids and everything. And he just sort of walked away from the experience of like, wait, she's normal. Like, I don't understand. Like, because the church is saying you're choosing to be this way, it's a cancer, it's a sin, all that kind of stuff. And they still kind of, they try to placate that by saying you can be Mormon now. I mean, you can be gay and Mormon, but you just can't act on it. It's just, anyway, that affected him. And so I think most people who are so outspoken against it, it's just like, you don't really know a gay. You may say like my cousin's gay, or like I worked with a gay. No, I mean like really know a gay person, and then
yeah.
by like existing with them and realizing that they there's no difference. There's no
Yeah. No. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So
If you never got caught, do you think you'd still be in that world today?
no,
Good.
no. I think the reason it was so hard and fast was because uh I was quite driven. Okay, so I loved acting in high school, but I was competing with playing sports. Like my three older brothers left me a sports legacy, so I was like expected to do this. Plus, I was still trying to be straight. And anyway, I loved acting. And then when I went to college, I was like, oh, this acting thing's fun. Let me pursue that. And so I did that in college, but obviously failed out with the drugs and yada yada. Um, but even while I was in college, I booked my first soap opera, and I was like, "Well, look how easy it is," which is it never happens that way, and so, which is so funny. And so, but before falling into dealing and stuff, I really was convincing myself that like acting as a career, like I can do, like I think I can do this. But most especially because my favorite times with my father growing up were when he and I, so it was six other siblings or seven of us. And so whenever we had
Wow.
time alone with a parent, it was like treasured. And so my dad and I would always sneak away to the movies. And I remember, and we would, my dad was not Mormon. So that was another dynamic here. And my mother obviously being very Mormon, forcing us to go to church. And I was the best little Mormon boy for her, except I loved going to the movies with my dad because we would tell my mom we were going to go see this PG whatever movie, but he'd always take me to the rated R movies. And so I grew up watching the 90s action heroes like Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the classic guys with my dad. And if there was any stupid 90s sex scenes, my dad would be like, "Oh, chicas, cover your eyes," it's really cute. But I just remember watching him watch the movie screen, the silver screen, and just like thinking like I've never seen him look like that. I've never seen him look at any of us like that. And then just like I already loved acting, but it was like I need to be up there. I need to be up there on that big screen. And it's so innocent, of course. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's ultimately, yes, I'm desperately needing to be loved and validated for my father to love me. Sorry, but at that time, at that moment, there's nothing wrong with that little boy thinking that. I have to say that. Or watching my mother watch, the actresses on the red carpet at the Oscars and just, but I was like watching that, but then also knowing I loved acting. I was like, oh, okay, okay, cool. I gotta be famous. Like, and I was powerfully driven in that, I was like, I gotta be successful in Hollywood. And so I had that already as I was walking into um, dating the dealer. But the reason I even started going into the DC scene was the first breakup. So I was in a relationship all 4 years of high school, undercover, with my best friend, boyfriend. I was madly in love with him. When I felt like the Mormon God was abandoning me at 13 and cursed me with the disease of gayness, he became my new God. And so when that ended at 19, drugs and alcohol became the new God. And so that was kind of, even though all that's happening, I still had this drive to be like, well, I'm going to be an actor in this whole thing. And so um, I dated another guy for 2 years. And when that was ending, I was so terrified of the breakup. That's what threw me into DC. I was like, I'm going to do drugs to save my life. I truly thought that. And fine, that's fine. And so when I was dating the dealer, I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to learn. I'm going to have really cool stories that I can tell on David Letterman one day. Like, that's
Well, now
absurd.
you do.
I mean, I didn't mean for that to really
Yes.
happen. But because I started having experiences like, oh, this is like a movie. This is like a movie. And um, but the this is I didn't realize I was answering this question for so long. But the acting part was just before I got arrested. I proved that dealer dumbass boyfriend. I proved him wrong, and I was actually getting out. I was like, cool. I got a couple thousand. I just dropped out of theater school, but I can go back to the community college and then go back to theater school. Like, great. And because it was so, because I was 22. I was like, I'm invincible. I have so much life ahead of me. So that was the thinking. So I was actually getting out right before I got arrested. So I do think watching my peers like continue to grow or something would have happened that would have shaken me out of it. I do believe that. But
Awesome.
but would I have struggled with alcohol and drugs from that point on? That's a whole other question. And
Mm,
um, the choice to get sober, even 20 years later, is still the best decision I've ever made. It's
absolutely.
still it's such a good decision that I even wonder if I actually made it or if that was just something made for me, some higher power, and like that is just part
Really.
of my fate, my destiny, my journey, I guess.
Wow. Now, when you watch yourself on screen, or have you seen your dad watch you on screen and give that same look?
Um, I've seen it. Great question. Um, there's a sad answer to this because my dad passed in 2023.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
no, no, it's okay. It's okay. Um, and my work, oh, actually, yes, because why would I forget this? When I had a good amount of success, in the early 2010s, yes, I got to bring my dad to set. I got to like, and in that was a fun, like just wide eyed and like, oh, like so I got to see him, even see how it all works, how it all comes together. Um, so I got to experience it even more, and he would watch the screen behind the director's booth, and it was a fun day for him, I'm sure. So I did, but even then, I don't think I was able to like fully take in what was happening with him. Obviously, it's it's easier now with this understanding that I have. And do I wish that he, lung cancer didn't take him,
Mm,
before I could really, really take him to a premiere like of a big blockbuster and, watch your son up there? Sure. But I don't think that's a superficial, ultimately superficial reason to pursue my career. I'm deeper. I'm pulled deeper by the love of it. The I love the challenge of each role and what that brings and that kind of stuff. And also, how do I heal this with my dad needing his validation separate from all the acting stuff anyway, which I think we got to. We definitely
Awesome.
got to by the time he passed. So that's
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I know.
great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your paintings? I've seen that. They're beautiful.
Oh, I will talk about art all day. I appreciate that because it's so fun because it's something separate from what I thought.
Mm.
Maybe people have things in their lives that are happening that they never ever could have like, wait, what? How's this happening? And it just makes it so fun because my hands aren't on it. Like it isn't like with acting, it was like, ugh, it has to happen this way and in this time and
Somebody's telling you what you should be doing.
yes. And then suddenly there's this thing over here that's just like, oh, this is fun. This isn't touched by anybody. This is my thing. And so
Yeah.
around that time too, like I always loved art. I didn't paint, but I loved like art history. My mother is a decorative artist, and my eldest brother, like I said, he was a creative designer for YouTube, but he is now like a full-time artist, and he does these really cool seascapes, like oceans views that look like you could touch the water.
Wow.
But I paint abstract. I'm like, I don't have the patience for that. And so, I was in between acting jobs, I needed some other kind of income. So I totally, of course, this is how the universe works, but I fell into being a gallery director, and I was like, well, this is fun. I like this. I like selling art. This is cool. I'll do this. And then I didn't have like 10 grand to pay um, my my artist for his work. So I was like, I'll go home and I'll do it. And then I really quickly realized why I was paying him 10 grand. But I was like, oh, I love this thing. And then, for gosh, 8 years, 10 years, like it painting was for me. I gotta say, if anybody just wants a mindful activity to even heal what's happening in the unconscious, just pick up some crayons or paints and take out a piece of paper and do something abstract. And it is so pleasing. It gets you in touch with your creativity. It heals. It does heal trauma. I mean, if you get in touch with it and then you just paint it out, it will heal trauma. And so I feel like that's what was happening. I mean, I was painting. I mean, I couldn't stop. I mean, it was just like, this is amazing. And then one day I looked up and I was like, oh, wait, these are pretty good. I wonder if people will buy them. And then, yeah, so like
That's awesome.
it helps that I ran an art gallery that I like know how to like approach these galleries. And so now I sell prints on my website that, because that way people can afford it from, all sizes. I have a show. I mean, this is crazy. I have a show in Berlin next month. It's like,
Oh my God.
yeah, it's like
That's
Berlin.
awesome.
I have one here in Pasadena. It's just like, okay, okay, well, that's happening. Let's just, okay, cool. I mean, again, as we started this, like, it's just absurd that any of this is happening after
I
hearing my
know.
story.
You're
So
very fortunate. Yes, yes. Very.
I, but I paid for that.
Yes, you did. You did. You went through hell.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to sound ungrateful. I don't want to sound anything, but I'm making a joke,
Yes.
but like, if things were still absolutely shitty today, I would have been like, dude, God, what's up, man? Like, bro,
Yeah.
bro. You really want me to like off myself? Like, I don't get it. Like, but yeah, yeah, yeah. I
That's
do.
awesome.
I am grateful for the superpower of like, nothing
Yeah.
compares to that. So it makes me automatically grateful for today.
Yes. You also have a strong acting career too. So are you working on anything right now? Anything upcoming
Oh,
shows?
I wish. No, I mean, as it goes, you audition for things and then you wait to hear and then you're like, oh, you almost got it, but it went to this bigger name. Nah, I'll be grateful when I have a bigger name. No, I just finished doing last season of 911 on ABC. I did
Nice.
a
Oh,
number of
wow.
episodes. That was a lot of fun. Just sort of it's been because it had been a moment. It had been a moment since I got them credits rolling. So It was nice to just, be working on set
Yeah.
opposite Angela Bassett. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like,
I know, right?
oh,
That's awesome.
oh.
She's
I mean,
amazing.
everything I did was with her, and I learned so much working with her, and just how professional she is, and just doing the work. I was
Yeah,
very grateful. Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, where's the best place for people to follow your work, find your art, acting, your updates on your book?
Yes, thank you for that. The best place, well, I aggregate everything to Instagram. I kind of funnel it all to that. So that's maybe we put those in the show notes, but that's at Sean Hemeon. And then um, from there, you can do the, what do you call it? Like the tree links. And you can click, my website is seanhemeon.com, but also there is where I have all my updates on, the publication date for the book when I have that. It's got some of my acting stuff, but mostly it has available, prints, all sizes, framed on canvas. I just decided to. I've sold majority of my originals, but I love them so much; they're so good that I was just like, I wish I could have this for other people. And then I found the way of like, oh, okay, cool. I can actually print these, and people can buy them as canvas or paper, framed, and that kind of stuff. So I'm grateful to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for showing up with so much honesty and depth. I really appreciate your time and your openness, and I'm honored to share it here. And I wish you strength, peace, and continued creativity as you keep telling your story in your art, in your acting, and in your book. I'll be watching and I'll be cheering you on for sure.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for
Oh,
having
thank
me.
you.
And that brings us to an end of another episode. Sean, thank you so much for sharing your story with such brutal honesty and depth. It's not easy to revisit the darkest corners of your past, but in doing so, you've given us all something powerful: truth, redemption, and a reminder that healing is possible. To everyone listening, if this conversation moved you, please share it. Follow the show and leave a positive review wherever you're tuning in. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. Links are in the description. Every bit helps keep these real, raw conversation going. Mahalo nui loa. Until the next time.